Hey guys, it's Hannah and welcome back to my channel. It is officially the end of September, which means it's time for a monthly reading wrap up. So for the month of September, I ended up reading 14 books, and to just break it down for you guys, I read one women's fiction, one YA mystery, two thriller mysteries, four contemporary romance, three nonfiction, and three historical fiction books. I ended up going to the library quite a bit for the month of September, so I don't have a lot of the copies of these books anymore. Also read quite a few on my Kindle, and also was on a couple of road trips the last couple weeks of September, so I ended up listening to a couple of audiobooks, hence why I got through 14 of these super quickly for the month of September. That's a little bit abnormal for me if you're familiar with some of my other monthly reading wrap-ups. Normally, I read anywhere between 6 to 10 books a month, so 14 I think is the most amount of books I have read in a month so far. So to get into it, the very first book that I read for the month of September was Wild at Heart by K.A. Tucker. This is a women's fiction book set in Alaska. This is a continuation of her, I believe it's Wild at Heart series. So Wild at Heart is number 2. I think Simple Wild was the first one, if I remember correctly. The first one I ended up rating 5 stars, so I was very excited to jump into book 2. We kind of pick up where we left off with our main characters. The main male character in the novel is a bush pilot in Alaska, so he has a very grumpy sunshine type of a personality, and then our leading lady is a fierce city girl from Canada. I believe she's from Toronto. So they fall in love, and then we kind of pick up their story where they end up living together in Alaska, and we get most of Kala's perspective as she is trying to navigate being in Alaska, what that means for her relationships, what she needs to do in order to survive, because Alaska winters, if you're familiar, do not get a lot of sunshine. It is very, very cold and dark. And with her being from the city, there's just some growing pains that comes with living in a remote location, but also living in a location that does not give you the best opportunity for survival. So there are some funny moments to this. We see a lot of growth and development in our characters. Overall, I believe I gave this a 3 star. It was not my favorite. I really loved the first one. I felt like the romance plot was a lot more believable. I felt a lot more connected to the characters. I think in book 2, just my general perception of it is just that it didn't give a lot of the romance side of things, or a lot of fade to black scenes, which is fine. I appreciate more clean romance in my books. However, it just didn't really add to the overall plot. It was just a lot of, I don't know, just scenes that didn't really add to the dynamics of the characters or really show that much growth between them as a couple, really. Also, some of the inner monologue I just got tired of from our main character, Kala. She just seemed very, how do I want to say? She just didn't really want to embrace the lifestyle that she was thrown into and the circumstances of living in Alaska. So for that reason, I just didn't really connect super well to the characters. So 3 stars for Wild at Heart. The next book that I read was One by One by Frida McFadden. This was actually an audiobook that I listened to through Spotify on one of my road trips over the month of September. I also gave this 3 stars. We're kind of following a cast of characters to this hotel in the woods for a couples retreat. Our main character, she is unhappily married. There's a lot of tension between her and her husband, so we're kind of getting her monologue of just some of the trials that puts her through. And there were a couple plot twists that I really liked. Nothing really stood out to me. It was just kind of an easy audiobook to kind of get through. It really captured my attention. If you're familiar with Frida McFadden, she does a really great job with her mystery novels, so I would recommend it, but it wasn't one of my favorites that she has written. The next book I ended up reading on my Kindle, and that is The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I absolutely adored the Inheritance series by her, so I was really excited to pick up another Jennifer Lynn Barnes book. This book, I ended up giving it 3 stars. We're kind of following a unique group of teenagers that like live together and solve cold cases for the FBI. There's a couple of really great plot twists in this. I really enjoyed the different quirks that the various characters have. Also really enjoyed kind of this like love triangle that's like occurring in the background of this book. It was good. It just, I don't know. Some of it was a little bit gory for me, which is interesting because it's a YA mystery. I don't really particularly like a lot of gore in my books. So I think for that reason, I just rated it a little bit lower. But it's a fun, quick, fast-paced read if you're familiar with her writing. Jennifer Lynn Barnes is incredible at writing mysteries. The next two are actually part of a series. I read Well Played and Well Met. I'll put both of them up here on the screen for you guys. Well Played and Well Met is part of this like Renaissance Fair theme series, and I absolutely adored them. They're so freaking cute. They each follow a different character that like volunteers at the Renaissance Fair. So in Well Played, we are following two different characters. The one girl is like a tavern wench, and then the guy, he is like a band manager for one of the like specialty musicianal groups that like perform at the Renaissance Fair. So they kind of start off as friends and then become something more than that, which I absolutely love in my romance books. I think it's a really underplayed trope, going from like friends to lovers. It's a little bit more of like a slow burn. And I absolutely loved it. I really, really liked it. I ended up giving this book 3 stars for Well Played. The next book after Well Played is Well Matched, and in this one we are following a single mom, and the main guy is one of the like Scotsmen that like perform at the Renaissance Fair. The mom actually does not like get too involved with Renaissance Fair, just the guy does. And they also kind of start off with friends, but this is a fake dating trope, and that is absolutely adorable. It's a very unlikely couple as well, because the main lady, she is a single mom and she's just really struggling kind of what she wants her life to look like. Her daughter's about to leave the house and go off to college and graduate. She's going to be an empty nester. So there is an age gap, I believe about a decade between the guy and the girl in the book. But it was actually really well done. I really enjoyed kind of hearing their romance story. I will say the lady in this book actually aggravated me a little bit, just because she just has a lot of like trauma that's built up from like a previous like relationship. She had a really traumatic divorce. It was very, very toxic relationship, and so because of that, she tends to push people away that try to get too close to her. And I love the main guy in this book so much, so I felt so bad for him that he was having to deal with her just like pushing against him constantly, of this like, I want you but I don't want you, but I want you but I don't want you. And so for that reason it got a little old for me. I'm like, please just fall in love, please. Like, you are both just so good for each other. So I gave it 3 stars. It was still really good. I highly recommend the series Well Met. It is just absolutely adorable. Can't beat a Renaissance Fair themed book for the month of September, and especially the fall time frame. Next up, I jumped into another Emily Henry book, and that is Book Lovers. And you guys, this book is absolutely amazing. I freaking love Emily Henry's writing. She's quickly become one of my favorite authors of this year. I ended up reading a total of 4 books by her already this year. So needless to say, I absolutely adore Emily Henry. She just does a really great job with her character development from beginning to end, and just seeing the growth that the characters go through. In Book Lovers, we are kind of following like an enemies to lovers, rivals to lovers type of a trope. There's always an undercurrent of witty banter and humor in her stories. I also really appreciate that, because she does incorporate some heavier themes and topics into her stories. So it's really nice to have a little bit of like humor thrown into there. Basically, the overall like synopsis of this book is that our main leading lady, she just gets dumped all the time by her ex-boyfriends, and her ex-boyfriends go to these like small towns, and it's like the quintessential like Hallmark trope where the guy runs into the girl at the cafe, or like the girl owns a Christmas tree farm, the girl's like a small town heiress or something, and the guy falls in love with her, and then they like get engaged immediately and then get married. And you know kind of what I'm talking about, right? Like the small town romances. Yes, that's what ends up happening to our main character. Like every single guy leaves her and falls for the small town trope. She's from New York City, totally a city girl at heart, has nothing to do with like small town stuff at all whatsoever, but her sister ends up convincing Nora to go on this like sister retreat vacation for like a couple of weeks. She goes there, runs into one of her rivals in the publishing world, and we kind of just follow their romance story from there. So there's a lot of awkward moments. There's some really cute, like witty banter, like I mentioned. It is a rivals to lovers kind of story. So of course, all of the angst and like drama is like sprinkled throughout, which I really appreciate. And who doesn't love a good small town romance? Unexpectedly so. So gave it 4 stars. The next 2 books I ended up reading were nonfiction books. They're not part of a series or anything like that, but I have not read a lot of nonfiction lately, so I was really excited to kind of listen to both of these audiobooks. The first is From Scratch, which is a memoir by Tembi Loki, something like that. So Tembi is an actress, screenwriter. She married a very talented Italian chef, and they started their life in LA. They moved back from Italy to LA, and it's actually really sad, kind of the stuff that she goes through. She just retells kind of the different trials and tribulations that she and her husband go through. With her husband has cancer, he ends up passing away. She's now a single mom. She's trying to kind of fill the void of this grief of what to do post her husband passing, and it's very beautiful. We get a lot of food writing, a lot of kind of comfort and joy that she finds in recreating her husband's recipes. She ends up rekindling some relationships with his extended family that live in Italy. So we kind of get a little bit of travel writing involved in this memoir. It was absolutely beautiful. She narrates the audiobook, so I 100% recommend listening to From Scratch. I ended up just renting it from my library, and I'm really glad that I did. This was not a book on my TBR, but it is one that I'm really thankful that I read. I gave it 4 stars. The writing is beautiful. She did a great job with the narration. Highly recommend. The next book is I Heard There Was a Secret Chord by Daniel J. Levitin, I believe. This is an advanced reader copy that I received from NetGalley. Thank you guys so much for sending me this audiobook. I ended up listening this on a road trip. This is a nonfiction book. It is written more from like a scientific perspective on the health benefits of music and what that does for our brains, our neuropaths, kind of like our overall health. There's some really great examples and case studies of various different patients that kind of go through like music to heal them, and what that does for like people with Alzheimer's to kind of like reconnect with some of their previous memories. It is a very dense book. It was a little bit hard for me to get to, but I'm glad that I listened to it. It was a bit of a challenge, a bit of a stretch for me as a reader. I gave it 3 stars. The author does narrate the book, which I believe he did a really great job at. I just don't think it's my flavor, but I'm really glad that I gave it a try. I'm glad that I incorporated a little bit more nonfiction into my September reads. From there, I ended up reading No Exit by Taylor Adams, and you guys, I am so sad to say, but this is my first 1-star read of the year, which is really annoying because I read another book by Taylor Adams, which was The Last Word, and I gave it 5 stars. It was one of the best thriller mysteries that I have ever read. This one is I just did not like it. A lot of the writing was like taken place at the same location. We're basically following this girl. I can't remember if her name is Darby or Dora or something like that. It begins with a D. And she becomes stranded at this like rest stop in the middle of winter in Colorado. There's like no towns for miles, and she ends up seeing this like girl that's like held captive in one of the cars, and she like doesn't know what to do. So we basically just follow the entire evening. It takes place over like one night of what occurs, and it's the same scene like kind of over and over because they're all like trapped at this rest stop, and there's like other people that are like trapped there. So she's trying to figure out like who kidnapped this girl and what does she do about it, which on paper sounds like a really great setup for an awesome thriller mystery, but it just got so repetitive, and there's just a lot of like icky stuff in there. Icky stuff, wow, that's very specific. There's some racial slang, there's just some like overall stuff described that doesn't like add to the overall plot, and for that reason I didn't even want to finish it. Like I got about like 40%, 50% of the way through, and I was just like done. I just was not interested at all. 1 star. That's enough about that. Next, I read The Dutch House by Ann Patchett. This is a historical fiction book. I believe I've read one other book by this author, and that was Tom Lake. Her writing is very cozy, and it is very character driven. So I was a little curious to see how I liked The Dutch House, because Tom Lake, I think I gave it like 3 stars. I also gave The Dutch House 3 stars. Essentially, we are following this sibling relationship as they grow up in this very fancy house in northern Philly. Through very sad circumstances, they end up having to leave this fancy mansion, and we're basically just like following them through the decades of what their lives look like on a day-to-day basis, how living in this fancy house has like impacted their relationship with each other, with other various family members, with between each other basically. And it was kind of more of like a character study through time. I'm beginning to find my tastes don't really lean towards like character-driven types of stories. I prefer very plot-heavy, plot-focused types of stories. So I think for that reason, I just didn't gravitate towards this book or give it a higher rating. But the writing is really unique. I really enjoyed the way that she uses some words in there. I had to look up a couple words, which is really awesome. It really expanded my vocabulary. Her writing is very descriptive. It's very cozy, like I mentioned. So it's a great fall read. I would recommend it if you like cozy writing. I then read The Wake Up Call by Beth O'Leary. This was my first book that I read by Beth O'Leary, but I will be reading many more because she writes really cute rom-coms. Most of the time it is very clean. There's a couple of romance scenes that could potentially lean like open door-ish, but it kind of just like fades to black, if that makes sense. So we don't get a lot of like descriptions on certain things, but we do get some really cute like witty banter. This is a classic enemies to lovers type of a trope, which I am an absolute sucker for. I could not put this down. I finished it in a couple days. It is also really unique because there's a lot of like English slang and how do I want to say, kind of like English terminology from the culture over there that's like incorporated into the book, which I also really appreciate. I love anything British. I think it's really cute and quirky. And our 2 characters, they end up working at this hotel during the Christmas season. So it does take place at Christmas. So keep that in mind if you pick this up. Maybe read it like more in the winter time. So our 2 main characters, they work at the same hotel. They are rivals. They do not like each other. And it's very classic miscommunication theme trope. The main girl really, really, really loves him. She writes him a letter. He ends up never getting this letter and kind of blows it off. So she thinks that he hates her, and like they start arguing and there's some tension. Meanwhile, the guy is like, why is she hating on me? I actually like her. I don't understand why this is happening. And it just like continues like that for like a whole year. So classic miscommunication. That's a very prevalent theme in this book. I gave it 3 stars. It was cute. It was fun. It was a quick read. I'll read more of Beth O'Leary's writing, and yeah, just really enjoyed it. It was a good romance. I then listened to The Duke of Windham by Julia Quinn. I've read all of Bridgerton basically and have not read another Julia Quinn book, so I went back into her backlist and wanted to listen to another one while I was on another road trip. This is narrated by Rosalind Landor. I freaking love anything that Rosalind Landor narrates. I specifically look her up on my Libby app for other audiobooks to listen to because she does such a great job with the different voices and whatnot. This is very self-explanatory. The Lost Duke of Windham, we are following this lost duke. He ends up finding out that he is supposed to like inherit this like estate basically, but he is a highwayman, so he kind of has like a nefarious background. He's not like the most morally upstanding gentleman type of a guy to like take on this role. So yeah, there's a lot of drama. It's very soap opera-esque type of a read. It was good. I gave it 3 stars. There's nothing bad to say about it, but there's nothing like extraordinary to say about it either. The romance was cute. I can't really recall too much about it, to be honest with you guys, and that's probably why 3 stars sounds about right. The next book that I read I actually own, and that is Becoming Myself by Stasi Eldredge. This was actually the book that my Bible study decided to read. We've been going through this throughout the entire year, actually, and I really like it. It is a great study into how scripture impacts us as women, and kind of what God's dreams are for you to become who he has designed you to be. Stasi Eldredge gives a lot of great examples from her life. She has a very unique backstory to how she became a Christian. She has gone through some really sad and traumatic things, and challenging circumstances, and she incorporates that into her book really beautifully. It is written really well. I would really recommend this if you guys do Bible studies or women's studies or anything like that. It's just a really applicable book for a woman. I did not rate this just because I don't typically rate nonfiction books that are like this. The last book that I read for the month of September is The Cloverton Charade by Sarah E. Ladd. I ended up listening to this, and this was an advanced reader copy that was provided to me through NetGalley. Thank you guys so much for giving me this free audiobook in exchange for an honest review. I ended up giving this 4 stars. It was one of the best historical fiction books that I've read so far this year. I absolutely loved our main character. She is from a background in London where her family deals with antiquities, and she gets called to go to this very fancy estate manor in the English countryside, set in Regency England, mind you. So she has to attend these various like social gatherings with the very wealthy people of London town, and she has to evaluate these antiquities that are like saved in the house because the manor is like going under. And she so happens to run into her family rival. There's like another firm in London that also deals with antiquities. And so the owner's son, Lucas, ends up going to basically do the same thing on behalf of the son of the manor. I believe they're like good friends. So there's a little bit of a mystery between the 2 characters. It's written in 3rd person, and we get both of their perspectives of why the other person is there at the manor, kind of like shocked at the fact that they both have to be there, and then they have to kind of almost reconcile, like, do we work together? Do we put our differences aside? Is there something more here than rivals? Are we actually like meant to be together? So there's like a mystery element. There are themes of romance. It is a clean read, so you don't have to worry about any open door scenes or anything like that. And I absolutely adore Sarah Ladd's writing. She just transports you back in time to Regency England. I cannot get enough of her writing. I need to purchase books from I need to actually buy her books and put them on my shelf as like little trophies, because I've pretty much listened to every single book that I've read by her. The narrator does a really great job. She absolutely kills the different like voices for the various characters, which I appreciate, and her accent is spectacular. That concludes my reads for the month of September. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening and watching today's video. If you haven't, comment, like, and subscribe to this channel. Give me any recommendations in the comments below of any other books you would like to see me read for the fall season, and I will see you guys in the next one soon. Bye!